One of the most common questions I get anytime I show Fairy eating anything is, what is she eating? So this is all of the foods that she is going through right now. Whenever I say we rotate, I mean throughout the day she gets all of this stuff. A common question is, well, how are you sure that she's getting proper nutrition? Is her stomach torn up all the time? Does she have diarrhea all the time? Like how is she not sick all the time? Hey guys, so today I want to talk to you about what Fairy eats and kind of my method behind this and my thought process. I'm a dog mom and I've had dogs that have been my sole responsibility for well over 20 years. So this is all just based on what I have done. Obviously I do research, like I constantly research and like get information from other sources. It's not just all thought up by me. But I'm not a nutritionist, so I think that's important to mention. One of the most common questions I get anytime I show Fairy eating anything is, what is she eating? So today I'm going to tell you everything that she eats. So right now, currently, we rotate all day long, by the way. Whenever I say we rotate, I mean throughout the day she gets all of this stuff. So she always, daily, she gets some type of kibble, she gets some type of freeze-dried raw, rehydrated, and then she gets some type of fresh food. So for fresh food, what I'm talking about is either something that I make her, I make a lot of her food for her, but also something like just food for dogs or any of those types of pre-made fresh foods that are not dry. And then as far as freeze-dried raw, we rotate between 3 or 4 brands, and then I just rehydrate those and give those to her every day. And then kibble, we also rotate between a few different, we rotate between 2 brands right now and then a few flavors, but I'm actually in the process of adding another brand. So whenever I tell people she eats like this, a common question is, well, how are you sure that she's getting proper nutrition? And to be really honest, the way that I look at it is the way that I look at how I get nutrition. If I was only eating, one thing, cereal, Cliff Bar, whatever, salads even, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, if I'm eating the exact same ingredients over and over and over and over for every single meal that I have, I'm not going to get all the nutrition that I could, right? So that's the way that I look at it with her and what she's eating. Because she's eating such a wide variety of food, she's going to have all of those nutritional buckets filled, just because there's no way that she couldn't. She eats enough variety regularly to where there's, in my opinion, I just don't think there would be a way for her not to be having her nutritional needs met. The other thing that I do, we do something called a hair Q test, which is a hair follicle test. It tests for heavy metals and minerals. And so we do that. So I do know that her levels are all where they should be. Everything's good. Nothing's too high, nothing's too low, everything's good. And then we also do a blood panel. So what this is, whenever you go to the vet, you can opt for them to do like a panel of blood work, and you can do like a full panel to really see everything. This is not going to show you the same thing as vitamins and minerals do, which is why I do, or this is not going to show you vitamin and minerals, which is why I do the hair Q test, but doing a full panel can still give you a way to just really take a kind of a bird's eye view of your dog's health. And that's what I really like about the hair Q test, is that I feel like that's even before it would show up on the blood stuff. So the hair Q test for me, it really makes me feel confident doing what I'm doing, and we haven't had any issues. I think it's very, very worth it no matter what, really, because whenever you can take a full picture view of your dog's minerals and vitamins and stuff and heavy metals that are in their bodies, I feel like that can be a good way to prevent things from happening possibly, or just get things under control before they get way out of hand. So like I said, I'm a big fan of that. And that's part of the reason that I really feel confident doing this, is because I know that I can really stay on top of those things. We don't have a very specific schedule for when Fairy eats or what she eats. She kind of gets to pick what she eats whenever. Typically she'll eat a little bit in the morning, maybe like a puzzle's worth of food in the morning, and then she'll typically have a topple for lunch. And then she'll have a couple more, either puzzle, lick mat, maybe a snoop, maybe another topple, something like that for dinner. And usually she'll have 2 or 3 of those things at night. So she kind of just eats throughout the day whenever she wants. Typically, we actually haven't been up long, but usually she also has a bowl of food right there, which is actually there. So she usually has a bowl of kibble on the floor available as well. I just haven't got to that point yet, but she typically always has kibble available. The way I look at kibble, and the reason that I always keep it in her diet, is because I feel like kibble is something that's very easy to come by, is cost effective. It does technically meet their nutritional needs. Like if you only had to have that for some reason, The other thing is it's like, the way I look at it, it's like chips or cereal or something. It's not gonna hurt you to have it. It's fine, it tastes good. Sometimes it's fun to have a little crunch, and that's just kind of what it is. And she eats as much or as little as she wants. And there are days that she doesn't eat as much or days that maybe she eats more. And sometimes this is gonna depend on what she's actually eating. If she's really had a lot of kibble that day, she may just want a little bit more food because kibble is gonna not be as filling as if she has a lot of like home cooked food, for example, where that's gonna be really hearty and just whole foods that are gonna fill her up. I don't necessarily monitor how much she eats or when she eats. I feed her when she wants. Obviously, if we were the type of people where we were gone a lot, then she would be on a little bit more of a rigid schedule as far as times go, but I still think I would let her pick. And then she also gets to pick what she eats. So I do this by, number one, she has buttons, 4 different food containers. So Puzzle, Lick Mat, Topple, Snoop, and then she just has a regular food button, which typically means like that food. That's just food in a bowl. She has different buttons like that to actually get her to the right container. And then from there, what I'll typically do is either, I know if this Topple is wet food, like that's what we put in a Topple, I know that. Same thing with Lick Mat. I know what goes on a Lick Mat. But if it's Snoop, Puzzle, or what was the other thing? Basically, if it's Snoop or Puzzle, she gets to pick what goes in it. So she'll just be given a few bags to pick from most of the time. Occasionally not. If I already have a puzzle made that she didn't finish earlier, or if I'm just in a hurry, then I'll just make it how I see fit. Sometimes if I do that, she will say something on her buttons and be like, this is potty, you know, and she wants something different. So she has a choice as much as I can possibly remember to give her one. Someone asked me if I consider what she wants whenever I'm preparing her meals, and absolutely yes. If she doesn't like it, we don't buy it again. Or if it's in the case of like, I found out that she didn't really like the way that broccoli tastes on its own, so now I just ground it up really fine in her food, then that way it's blended in and she can't really taste it, but it gets the nutritional benefits for her that like she should have anyway, you know what I mean? But that's also why I try to start with smaller packages and stuff, is to see what she likes. So things that I avoid giving her. I avoid giving her most what I call people food. So keep in mind, I'm vegan, she's not. So a lot of my food is gonna be more beans and that kind of stuff based, right? Where that's not good for dogs. From everything that I know anyway, I don't think that's good for dogs. I've not read anything that suggests like your dog being on a vegan diet would be okay. I try not to give her rice too much also. That's another thing that I'm kind of like, if there's a non-rice option, then she'll get that instead, if that makes sense. So I kind of avoid rice, and that's just because arsenic. I just don't really want her to have rice every day. But like if she has it for, if it's in one of her kibbles, for example, and that's gonna be maybe a third of her food, I don't care if she has it a day or two, but like I said, I really like to break it up and not have it in every single meal if possible. That's just, and not every single day if possible too. That's just my preference. And I do avoid giving her, like I said, I don't give her food that I eat because I eat a lot of, I'm vegan, so I eat a lot of beans and a lot of stuff that just wouldn't, it would be nonsense for her to eat it. Like it's not gonna provide her with anything. But I do give her a lot of vegetables. So she gets squash, she gets carrots. She really loves carrots. She gets spinach, she gets bananas, she gets blueberries. There's a ton of vegetables that she gets. I avoid onion, of course. I avoid grapes, avoid raisins, avoid any type of dehydrated fruit, except for coconut. I will give her like the coconut out of trail mix. She really likes that. And she also really likes like dried bananas, freeze-dried bananas, I think. So those are kind of the only people snacks that I'll give her, is if I'm eating trail mix and it has that in there, I'll give it to her because I feel like those are fine things. Like it's not gonna hurt her to have banana chips or coconut chips. She can have both of those, but everything else I eat, I kind of don't give her. So the other reason I avoid giving her food from my plate is because she's my service dog. And so it's just, we don't go out to eat a lot, but it's never gonna be appropriate for her to beg at the table if we're out somewhere. And because we do go places where other people are eating, we go to the grocery store, sometimes there's kids in carts who have snacks. You know what I mean? It's just not a good idea for Farabee to get used to having people food. Definitely not while someone's eating, if that makes sense. If I ever do cook anything that she can have, then I put it in her bowl and give it to her, or her puzzle or something, but I don't feed her directly from the table, even if it is something that she can have, if that makes sense. Oh yeah, part of the other reason that I do this is because she gets bored with the same food and I get bored with the same food. So why would I think that she would just be okay with having the same thing over and over again? Food is one of those few pleasures in life that we all are going to consume food anyway. We have to live. So it might as well be fun. It might as well taste good and be some sort of a, I don't know, an exciting experience, I guess. So I think that's a really inexpensive way to just provide her with, you know, a more enriched life and a more exciting life. I mean, I like to taste stuff. I'm a taster. I'm a person, if I go somewhere and I'm gonna like get beer, for example, I want a flight because I would rather have a lot and taste a bunch of different flavors. And so that's the way that I am as a person. If there's a sampler, I want the sampler instead of the full amount. Even if it's gonna be less food, I still want the sampler because I want all the different flavors. And so that's kind of the way that I look at it with her, is she'd probably like to have different flavors. Like, flavors are fun. But I think she would get bored, is what I was gonna say. I think it would just be so boring to have the same foods over and over and over again. Like, how boring would that be? Another thing that's really important to mention, I get questions a lot of like, is her stomach torn up all the time? Does she have diarrhea all the time? Like, how is she not sick all the time? And she's never had an upset stomach. Actually, hold on, she did get diarrhea one time, and this was back in 2019, and we had gone to a dog event and one of the dogs had some type of something. And we actually got an email from somebody telling us like, oh, if you were at this, then this dog had this and you need to go get your dog medicine. So it was a thing. Like, she actually had like, is it Gardia? I don't know what it's called. It's like the diarrhea thing that dogs get, that they pass to each other. But that's the only time she's ever had a messed up stomach, ever in her life. So no, this does not have a negative effect on her. And to be really honest, her stool is always super, super consistent and firm and just like what you would hope your dog's poop would be. So I feel like this works out really well for her. I also give her carrots, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but I give her carrots, and a great thing about carrots is because they are so high in fiber, they don't smash them up all the way if they're a fresh carrot. It kind of helps them express their anal glands. So if your dog is having to have those expressed at the vet a lot, maybe talk to them about incorporating carrots into your dog's diet and see if that'll help. When I first noticed this happening with Farabee, I actually mentioned it to my vet because this is a little bit gross, but whenever she pooped, there was like, you could tell there was some anal gland solution on like the end part of her poop. And I was like, oh my gosh, is that normal? And so I asked the vet and they're like, that's exactly what you want to see. So I was like, oh my gosh, cool. So yeah, carrots are great for that. Like I said, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's like consult your vet before you give your dog a carrot, but do what you will with that information. You know your dog, so you know if they're gonna be a dog who's gonna get choked on stuff really easy and gobble, then this might not be for them, or cut up in little bites. I have seen some dogs just get like a whole entire carrot stick and just get to gnaw on it, and that works for them. I typically break Farabees at least into sticks, but a lot of times I'll just cut them up too. So whatever, but it still all serves the same purpose. It doesn't matter if I cut them up into tiny pieces or if I give her a carrot stick, it still expresses her anal glands. So if you're having trouble with that, definitely check it out. I think it's good for them anyway, but that's just me. One of the biggest things that I look for whenever I'm looking for food for her is, number one, is it human grade? That's the first thing. So to me, that's like probably my tip-top number one deciding factor. To be honest with you, sometimes I forget this, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I've just heard this brand, or I've had a good experience with this brand, and I forget to look for that part, and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot, and that one's not human grade. That happens occasionally. But for the most part, everything is human grade. Everything that is fresh, so all the food that I cook for her, and if we purchase like prepackaged frozen fresh food, or pantry stable fresh food, all of that is always human grade, and the same with her kibble. The place that I find that I get in trouble is on the raw. Whether it's freeze-dried raw or fresh raw, whatever, I find that certain formulas will be human grade in like one brand, and then maybe another flavor may not be. And so there have been a handful of times where I've been like, I thought this was a human grade brand, and it's like just that one line of their brand or just this one flavor. So that's something that I really do struggle with, but I do my very best to make sure that it's as much human grade food as possible for her. And the reason I do this is because I have heard If it is not human grade, then it can have sick animals, animal parts from sick animals. I've also heard that it can have animal parts from animals who have been euthanized. So I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. These are just things that I've heard. And so because of that, I just don't want to give her anything. Like if something's been euthanized, like I don't want her eating what's been euthanized with, you know what I'm saying? Like, or a sick animal. So that's why I really try to stick with human grade if possible. But like I said, occasionally I slip up and I miss, and it just is what it is. But the whole thing is better overall, right? Like we just want to be better overall. And occasionally we're going to make a mistake. Like let's try to make the majority be really healthy and good. But then if you have a little something here and there that might not be the most healthy, but it's still okay to consume, then it just is. Another benefit of feeding like this is because you do have such a wide variety. If something happens and there's a recall, you just can stop feeding that food and it's not going to mess your dog up because you're in a rotation of like 5 things. So it's not going to matter. They're not going to miss a beat. I also feel like feeding this way, it does create a less picky dog. And I feel like it sounds like it would be the opposite. And I feel like people think I'm a liar whenever I say this. But if you don't have something long enough for you to get tired of it, then it's always going to be exciting whenever you get it, unless you just don't like it. And then the thing is, if your dog truly doesn't like something, why are you trying to force them to eat it? If they're eating everything else, but they don't like this one thing, like that's okay to have preferences. Like you probably have a food you don't like. So I don't know. I don't feel like it creates a picky eater. I feel like if anything, it helps her to know what she likes and helps her to point out if something maybe not be up to snuff. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good thing. So tips that I have for doing this, if you want to try this with your dog and you haven't yet, number 1, start slow. Always start slow anytime you're changing to a new food or incorporating a new food, whatever it is. The other tip that I think makes a huge difference is if your dog does eat out of a bowl, do not, for anything, feed that new food that you're feeding your dog. Don't put that in the bowl at all until you are committed and until you're sure that it's fine for them to only eat that if that's how they are. Not that you're trying to switch necessarily, but what I've seen happen is dogs who do only eat out of a bowl, if you put a new food in there and they're not used to that, a lot of times they will only eat that new food and they will stop eating the old food. And they will kind of do a little holdout sort of situation, which I'm all for them standing up for themselves. I love it. Like, absolutely, you go girl, there is a bag. But the problem is they don't know that that can mess their stomach up by them just stop eating what they've always eaten for the last few years and then switching. So it's very important that you don't put that in their bowl. Like, use that as training treats. If they have like a Snoop or a Kong or a puzzle or something, use that like a small portion, a very small portion. A lot of people say to start with like a quarter of their meal if you're switching. I think that's too much. I personally think an 1/8 of what they would typically eat is way enough, and just use those treats for a few days and then move up to a quarter. Absolutely, if you want to add in more stuff, any more diversity to your dog's diet, just take it away from their bowl. Don't put it in their bowl. Let it be a treat, let it be a fun thing until they're used to having it, until you're sure that it works for their body. That way they don't turn their nose up at their food in their bowl, because if you do that, if you have your dog get to where they think they're getting a new food and they will only eat the new food and they won't eat the old food, it can, and most likely will, make them extremely sick. We had a dog do this maybe 15 years ago. I'm not even playing with you. And this is whenever we only did kibble. We got a new kibble, incorporated in. I mixed, like it says on the bag, it says like mix a quarter of your dog's food or whatever, a quarter of this with your dog's old food. We did that. That's exactly what we did. This might have been 20 years ago, but we did what the bag said, right? Like, okay, incorporate a quarter of this with your dog's food over the however many days. He picked all of the new food out, which I don't blame him because it was new and it was different. He'd had the same thing for the first like 3 or 4 years of his life. He got so sick. I'm not even playing with you. He was laying in bed that night because he would not eat anything but that. Like, we switched him in the morning and that was the only thing he would eat. And I think it had been like 2 days at this point. I'm not even playing with you. This is gross, but he was vomiting and diarrhea at the same time on our bed, laying there. This was the sickest I've ever seen anything in my life. And that was from him switching. He switched himself to kibble that we were not like completely ready to be switched over to, but he just refused. So ever since that happened, I learned my lesson, and I will never, ever, ever, ever switch a dog and put whatever their new thing is in with their regular food, ever. ever. Because I feel like if you treat it as a treat, then they are not going to expect it. Like, even if it's like, wow, that was really similar to like something I've had before, but it's not in my bowl, like this is still my meal. You know what I mean? That is the cautionary tale that I have for you about switching quickly. And also listen to your dog. If your dog doesn't like something, if they do say they don't like something that they've had before, it's okay for them to say they don't like something. They have preferences. And also, I truly believe that there are a lot of dogs who will know there's something wrong with the food and they don't have a choice and they have to eat it anyway. I have read some really sad things in some of these dog food recall, like the comment section of these, where people have been like, my dog was trying not to eat for like 2 weeks and we forced her to just have that and then she got whatever. You know what I mean? Like, she ended up getting sick. So I'm just saying, I think that there is a lot of value in your dog, like listening to your dog. If they do turn their nose up at something, like maybe it's not the quality you thought, or maybe it's just been sitting out too long. Dog food can go rancid if it's open for too long. I did a video about this years ago about how I seal her food up, so I'll link that for y'all. But also, let me show you what all we're going through as far as the different varieties of food. So this is all of the foods that she is going through right now. And then we actually have some that I've just made her that's fresh, and then we have another frozen one that I'll show you. So right now we are working through a bag of Open Farms freeze-dried raw patties. This is the surf and turf, and then we also have it in the chicken, and these are just freeze-dried raw patties. I don't really want to touch them because I'm filming, but they're patties. They're shaped like that. You break them up and you rehydrate them, so she gets typically about 3 of those patties or equivalent of that every day. We also go between this brand, Ultimate Pet Nutrition, Dr. Marty's, and I think there might be one more. I have all of these things linked on our Amazon store, by the way, so I'll link it for y'all so you can get literally everything I'm going to show you. You can buy on Amazon, or a lot of this stuff you can get at like a regular pet store too. This is the kibble we're working through right now. So this is the Honest Kitchen. This is a human grade one. This is the beef one. We've had the chicken one as well. We're probably going to finish the chicken one today. We have like this much left, but once again, human grade. I like it. It has good ingredients. This is one of the brands we use. We have not tried Pet Plate or Sundays, but I want to try both of those. Those are on my radar to try. To be honest, the reason I tried these is because they're 1 pound bags, and even though it's a really shitty price, it's like $8 for a pound, so it's not a very good deal. But because if I'm trying a new flavor of something for her, I want to get the smallest amount possible, even if it is a weird price, just because I don't want to have food waste. Like, our animal shelter will not take open bags of food, so I don't have anywhere to give this stuff to. So I would rather just buy a smaller portion, pay a little bit more, and then from there on, you know, we can just buy the bigger one. So I will be buying the bigger bag of both of these. This is one of the pantry stable fresh meals that we get. So this is human grade. This is just food for dogs. Honest Kitchen also makes one. We don't have it on hand, but this brand, they also make a pantry stable, like a little box meal like this. We have the frozen of this too. So I'll link all that for y'all. And then if you are gonna cook for your dog, this is the supplement that I use. I picked this one after doing a lot of research in groups, in Facebook groups, where they were talking about that they exclusively cook for their dogs. So that's how I landed on that one. The other thing, like I said, I do cook for her. So I will link the cooking video that I did for her. And then also there's a post on my website. This is very much, it's not necessarily a recipe, it's more of guidelines for what I did. I just feel like it's a really easy way to just enrich your dog's life a little bit, and it might cost a little bit up front if you don't have a variety of foods, like maybe you're having to, you know, get started on that. But it really doesn't cost any more than it would cost to feed them normally, and it's just a little bit more fun. And I don't eat the same thing, so why should you, right? Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I hope that you found this helpful. We'll see you soon. Bye.